As the coronavirus pandemic starts to plateau here in the US, new questions and new problems are arising around the reopening of our cities, our states, and indeed our country. So this week we're speaking with the mayor of my home city, Los Angeles, about his controversial plans to reopen. And with political disruptor Andrew Yang about the wider societal implications of COVID-19. Andrew Yang is a political outsider who rose to prominence as a presidential candidate for the Democratic Party earlier this year.
Because it is not left, it is not right, it is forward, and that is where we're going to take the country in 2020. Thank you, Io. I love you.
Andrew Yang, thank you for taking the time today.
Thanks for having me. I hope you're all safe and sound.
Until very recently, you were a presidential candidate, and I wanted to ask, what do you think of the current government's response to COVID-19 and the ensuing economic crisis?
We've mishandled this crisis from the beginning, and we lost 70 precious days that could have been spent building up the capacity of our healthcare infrastructure and isolating patients and tracing contacts. Instead, because we lost that time, we shifted quite quickly into trying to mitigate community spread, which sent us all home, unfortunately cost tens of millions of Americans their jobs, has us teetering on the edge of a depression, and has necessitated a bailout, unfortunately most of which has gone to the biggest and best connected companies instead of everyday families around the country. I remember vividly, Shane, I was in Iowa campaigning because I was running for president. This was in late January. And I was seeing the reports and I said, wow, this coronavirus is very serious. And when I said this to a journalist, they looked at me like I had two heads, honestly. They were like, what are you talking about? And then I said, look, if I was a citizen, I would appreciate the fact that our government is on top of it. Best case scenario, it's a false alarm. But if it's not a false alarm, then we're going to have massive problems.
We saw it was coming, like you said. We saw it in China, in Taiwan, in South Korea, Singapore. We had time. Why were we so, ill-prepared?
I'm going to share a story from my family. One of my relatives landed in China not that long ago. And after she landed, she was tested, taken to her apartment. They put a monitor on her apartment, said, don't leave for 2 weeks. And then they had someone go visit her every day, check on her and take her temperature. Now, that's the kind of vigilance that they've been using, in part because they were burnt by SARS a number of years ago. That's not really the way we are wired, either in terms of our individual culture or the way our government is set up. And we all know that a lot of people are getting sick right now that are not going to the hospital because you essentially have to feel like your life's in jeopardy to risk heading to a hospital facility is being overrun by COVID patients.
Which brings us to the next question. Has this pandemic exposed pre-existing political and economic problems within our American system?
100%, and we can all see it. Pervasive financial insecurity so that many Americans can't shelter in place or forego income for more than a day or two. It's just one reason why I was championing universal basic income, because I believe we're all going to get sent home by the progressive automation of our labor, which is accelerating right now, because I guarantee you a lot of these businesses are figuring out how to do more with fewer workers. A polarized media where no one trusts anything, a polarized dysfunctional government that doesn't trust the guidance of experts, an inaccessible healthcare system. We were like a patient walking around with this whole series of pre-existing conditions that have made the virus much, much more lethal for, unfortunately, thousands and thousands of Americans, but also crippling to our way of life.
You mentioned universal basic income, or UBI, which was sort of one of the signature parts of your candidacy.
I'm standing for this very dramatic seeming proposal that every American gets $1,000 a month starting at age 18 until the day you die. And yes, it does stack on top of Social Security.
It seemed pretty radical at the time, but now it's effectively what we're doing through stimulus packages anyways. We're giving people, $1,200 or families more, et cetera, et cetera. Can UBI really work?
The fact is, tens of millions of Americans got a check for $1,200 in this past number of days, and they liked it. And so if you go to them and say, hey, it turns out that we shouldn't do that ongoing, that it's somehow going to hurt you, everyone will look up and say, what are you talking about? One thing I've said is that we're experiencing 10 years of change in the equivalent of 10 weeks. And that includes the problems, the automation of labor, The fact that millions of Americans are not going to have jobs to go back to, frankly, because it's not like every store, concert hall, bar, restaurant's going to open up at 100% capacity. It's common sense that when your house is on fire, you put the fire out. You don't worry about how much water you're using to put the fire out. It's the right thing to do. Like this $2 to $3 trillion we've already allocated, it's just the beginning. It's going to help, but we need to do more. We need a Marshall Plan scale rebuilding of our country on the way out, because our economy will not snap into place like a rubber band.
You know, everyone we've talked to on this show has said, you know, we're at war, we're putting out fires. Like you just said, we're going to throw as much water on this thing as we possibly can. But, and then after the but, they're like, but we're going to see societal change.
Oh, we're going to see change, all right, but it's not going to be the kind of change you would welcome with open arms, you know? Well, we're turning the dial up on many of the changes I was most concerned about. Where, again, if you look at the most common jobs in our economy, administrative and clerical, retail and sales, food service, transportation and truck driving and manufacturing, we are gutting those jobs. It's tens of millions of jobs that are not going to return. Right now, as we're having this conversation, fewer Americans on a percentage basis are working than at any point in our nation's history. And so if you look up and say, okay, you now have tens of millions of Americans who don't have a meaningful path forward, what does that community look like? You're going to see surges in domestic violence, child abuse, drug abuse, and suicides, like every social ill you can imagine, mental health problems. The crisis text line, which is a line where people contacted if they're going to do self-harm, traffic is more than doubled. You know, the only way that you're going to make something positive out of this is if you invest monumental levels of resources. We're talking trillions of dollars into anything that can engage people in work. I would be investing in public works, sustainable infrastructure, pretty much anything under the sun that you can get people hooked into in a productive way, we should be doing and sparing no expense. And this is not a this week, this month problem. This is like a this decade problem.
You've been labeled, let's say, as the tech candidate, math and science and that kind of thing. What's your reaction to the executive office and their sort of seeming distrust of science and scientists?
Right, and then I see the disinfectant, where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning?
Why is the Democratic Party, and let's say Joe Biden in particular, so quiet when, you know, in the past that would have been a springboard to, you know, many political attacks?
Well, I did see Joe tweeted something to the effect of, please don't drink bleach. Can't believe I have to say this. It's tragic what's happened to our country. Apparently 100 people in Maryland actually called like the helpline to say, hey, I'm considering drinking bleach. Goes to show just how afraid and desperate people are, and also how much people will heed the words of our leadership, even if they're complete nonsense. My case during my campaign was that Donald Trump's our president because we have been failing the American people for years and decades, where people's way of life was getting demolished and we were just pretending everything was fine. And that's the only way someone like Trump gets into the Oval Office. And so Trump is a symptom. But unfortunately, we have a crisis on our hands, and having someone like Trump as our leader is costing lives every single day.
Young people are, you know, coming of age during an economic crisis. How do we fix that?
We have screwed them. You know, it's very clear.
A lot of people forget that this is an election year because we are dealing with this pandemic. You initially supported, I believe, Bernie, but now have endorsed Biden. Why? A, and B, you said you could help him. A lot has been made of your success in leveraging the internet and social media and the Yang Gang for your campaign. How do you help Biden win in November?
I've always said I was going to support the nominee, and Joe, to me, was the presumptive nominee, and so I was glad to back him and hopefully help bring the party together and hopefully the country together. And I agree with you, the Yang Gang can really help Joe, because I've got a passionate, engaged base of people who are very native to the internet, and it's something that could be really valuable for Joe's campaign. I also think, Shane, that there's a narrative that the Trump campaign is putting out there that's going to be key to this election. He's saying this virus is a Chinese effort. I'm standing up to China, and Joe Biden's soft on China.
This is no time for Donald Trump's record of hysterical xenophobia.
Am I personally angry at the Chinese government? Hell yes. Their lack of disclosure cost us valuable time and cost lives around the world. But instead, we should be focusing our attention on what our government failed to do and not let them get away with this racializing or nationalizing a virus that knows no boundaries.
So last question, young people are, coming of age during a pandemic, during an economic crisis. Millennials have just had the rug pulled out from under them again. How do we fix that?
We have screwed them. It's very clear. And does pre-crisis. We just loaded them up with school loans and insecure jobs and said, somehow it's your fault. If you were a young person who's looking up, you would think these politicians want nothing to do with me. This doesn't affect my life. They don't care about me. They're not listening to me anyway. But young people have to look up and say, like it or not, our government has to be part of the solution moving forward. And so engaging with politics hopefully will become something that people will see as necessary for their own lives to improve. I get any young person who feels like politics is bullshit and none of us care about you. I totally get that. But I will say to them, I care about you. I want to help you, but I need you to help yourselves because we can't do it without you.
Andrew Yang, thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Shane. Stay safe. Stay healthy.
You too.
Good evening, Los Angeles. We heard Governor Newsom talk about a framework and some of the steps to open up our society and our economy in the days and weeks ahead.
Mayor Garcetti, thank you very much for taking the time today.
You bet. Great to be with you.
So I watched your Facebook Live speech last night. You announced easing restrictions here in LA County, as well as, along with Governor Newsom, easing some restrictions in California for a quote-unquote phased reopening. Now, maybe you could unpack what that actually means to us, because a lot of people have been waiting on both sides. One side saying, hey, it's too early. On the other side saying, you got to open it up, man. So what's happening?
So I think the first and most important thing to remember is this threat hasn't gone away. Today, the threat of this novel coronavirus is 100% what it was from day one. So the idea that the success we've had in saving lives somehow has lessened the threat, it's not. This is still incredibly dangerous. And we've seen all around the world some horrific scenes that could be LA or California in weeks ahead if we don't do this right. Second is we're not moving past COVID-19. We are now learning how to live with COVID-19. So we need to now navigate this space that is in between. What do I mean by that? People really want black or white. Is it open or is it closed? Truth of the matter is no place is completely open and no place is completely closed. And this isn't going to be a couple months. For the rest of the year, we're going to live in that space of many things changed, many things we do unavailable, and many things still closed as we knew them. So, these two extremes that we need to shut everything down and strangle this economy to death until people have no livelihood. I think that's something that we just can't do. On the other extreme, the idea of throwing the doors open tomorrow or thinking this is a linear path where every month it's just going to get easier and better, that would kill so many people. So now it's in between. How do you live in the gray space and assess? Take a step forward and wait, be patient for 3, 4, 5 weeks to see the impact. If it's been okay, then hold. If it's been good, step forward. If it's been bad or there's something worrying, step backwards and be okay with that.
So speaking about that gray area, in the last few days, we've had some protests here in LA and people saying, open it up faster, open up the beaches, open up the parks, people going stir crazy. The economy is taking a hit, obviously. And then you have people on the other side saying, what are you talking about? I mean, this is still on the rise. Cases are still growing. People are still dying. Do not open it up. So how do you walk that razor's edge?
I think you have to give people hope because there is real hope out there, and you have to give them hard truths. This virus thrives off of division. But when we're united, we're all wearing masks, not 90% of us or 70% of us. When we all adhere to the physical distancing, those things are very important for us all to realize it's not in a mayor's or a governor's hands, it's in all of our hands. Poll after poll say people are more worried about going too fast than too slow, and people do support the measures based on public health that we've taken. And I think that's really critical to remember.
How worried are you that we're going to sort of toggle back and forth, open up, the virus is going to continue to mutate and change, get deadlier, and then come back and make what we've gone through already seem like a tea party?
Well, I'm very worried. I think our current estimates are probably low on cases and on deaths in most of the projections. And so to me, this is a year and a half at minimum. This is going to be at least double the deaths that we see right now in the United States. But at the same time, we're not powerless. And don't use that power just to protest against somebody, to get something open and kill people. Use that power to make the right decisions, to do the right things, to help people out. I'd rather be open a little bit less and not retreat than open too much and have to retreat, because a retreat is an acknowledgement that death is coming. And that's what we want to avoid.
So LA County has some of the lowest death rates in the country. How did LA seemingly sidestep the fate of New York City?
I mean, part of it was timing and part of it was action. But I looked at history. At the beginning of this in January, I started reading about pandemics. I looked at the influenza pandemic of 1918. I wasn't going to be unafraid to make big decisions, although they were the toughest, most weighty decisions of my life. The last thing is I've made sure we're not an island. There's 13 mayors in the state that almost every other night we're on the phone together on a Zoom call. And I convened the first international call of mayors. It was like 56 mayors of the 96 most populous cities in the world. So we learned about testing from the mayor of Seoul. We learned from the mayor of Milan about how probably vulnerable populations would stay, like seniors and people with pre-existing conditions, at home for much longer, even as things opened up. Because I think it isn't just about responding and reopening, it's about recovering, but also we have to recover in a different way. We have to reimagine. We can't just go back to normal when it comes to the environment, back to normal when it comes to homelessness, back to normal when it comes to healthcare, back to normal when we look at things like transportation. This is a moment for us not to settle for the past or the present, but to try to reinvent the future and tell people we will learn lessons not just about a virus from this, but how we can be a better world for one another.
We seem to be completely ill-prepared here in America. Why did that happen?
I think there was a certain cockiness, a certain arrogance that we got this.
You talked about speaking to mayors in many different cities, the sort of cornerstone of testing. In LA, pretty much anyone who wants to get a test can get one. Shouldn't that be everywhere? Shouldn't that be every city?
Yeah, it's crazy the things that you get praised for or that are considered success should be the baseline. I'm glad that we're leading the way, but it shouldn't take a city or a fire department or mayors to set up testing, for instance. That should be something, we saw in South Korea. That was something that the federal government there had. I love our federalist system, but federalism only works when the national government is strong around a few things: our national defense, our international trade, our foreign relations, and something like a freaking pandemic. They should be there. They should be leading. It's not my responsibility as mayor to do testing, but I've made it my responsibility because these are my people and I don't want them to die. But we've gone every step forward, standing up these tests, talking to labs, buying the tests. I hope that will be an example for the national government, and I will gladly give up that power. I will gladly give up that responsibility. But when nobody's doing it, you've got to take that action.
Why did it seem to take us so long, even though we were sort of like a slow motion train wreck? We could see it coming, yet we seem to be completely ill-prepared in most of the cities, if not the country here in America. Why did that happen?
I think because we're the so-called richest country in the world, and we've been, in our own eyes, number one for so long. I think there was a certain cockiness, a certain arrogance that we got this. You saw that at the national level where people were like, Oh, there's plenty of reagents and swabs. We can produce whatever we need without having to dictate it.
We've conducted more than 5.4 million tests, more than any other country anywhere in the world.
You don't make a country great again by bragging about how amazing you are. You make it great again by your generosity to one another. What makes America very special is our freedoms. But let's use those freedoms and that creativity to also tell ourselves hard truths long after this day is over. Because if we start doing that, I think we have real hope of being honest about what we need to change, and we could have a plan of how to truly be an amazing country again.
I have 3 daughters here in LA County. When do the schools reopen?
So they're going to reopen, they said, in August for Los Angeles Unified School District. They're not sure whether that will be in person yet or still virtually. It might not be 5 days a week, the same class completely filled and full. But I think it's really important for our young Angelenos to see each other, to see their teachers. And I believe that can be done safely. So we should try it.
And there was a big kerfuffle this last weekend about Orange County. They opened up their beaches, and then people from LA and San Diego went down there, and then they had to shut them down again.
Open our beach! Open our beach!
When can we expect beaches and parks to open again?
I think, May 15th is when our order runs through. And I think recreational spaces, I hope, are ones that we can do. I've been looking at things all over around the world, but you look at Australia, they've opened the beaches from 6 to 9 in the mornings for exercise. I believe that we can set up a way to do that. And I hope that as early as next Friday, we'll lay out those rules. Let's do it. Let's take some baby steps together, and let's earn the next step. Don't be that individual who says, hey, I'm strong, I don't have to worry about this, or politically, I don't like my mayor or my governor, so I'll do whatever I can to stick my finger in their eyes. And if we can take those steps together, places like our beaches and our parks, I'm confident that we can step up to this new freedom with our responsibility and manage in this crisis.
Mayor Garcetti, thank you very much for your time today, and thank you for your ongoing work.
Always much strength and much love to you and everybody watching.